Faust is this new anti-hero modern type of person, epitomized by Faust. Maybe a little like Hamlet in some ways, but also different. So Caspar David Friedrich gives us these two paintings about what is it like to be a modern person in the world. The first one, Wanderer am Nebelsee, the wanderer above the sea of mists, shows a figure. He's dressed like a hiker. That's what the 19th century outfit he's wearing. So he's hiking in the mountains, the Bavarian Alps in this case. On the top of a cliff, or promontory, looking out over a valley filled with fog, with things he can see and things that he cannot see. Most people, when they look at the painting, see a large human figure, relatively, in a central position, understanding, dominating, being the most important in the scene, a kind of Superman, anthropocentric, centered on the human. The same painter, here not painting the Bavarian Alps, but here painting the North Sea. So this is a seacoast in northern Germany. The monk by the sea. There we have the Atlantic Ocean, cold and stormy, the storm that's also over the ocean, and this kind of windswept gray beach. In the midst of this almost desolate environment, there now is the human being. Both of them are images of humans in nature, but rather like Bachot, for example, here the human is tiny, fragile. You almost have to look twice before you see the figure down at the bottom. But what is it that the two of these images have in common? The tiny, fragile monk next to the enormous vast sea and sky, and the apparently confident hiker up in the mountains looking at a beautiful, sunny, foggy image? I would say rather simply what they have in common is they are alone. Modernity, and that's what we're beginning to get to with the 19th and 20th century, is often especially preoccupied with aloneness and with its companion, loneliness. Caspar David Friedrich will give me one last painting that I want us to use. So here's another setting, again, a natural setting. It's a moonrise, it's what it's simply called. It's called the moonrise. It's in an empty landscape with trees and rocks, far from anything that looks like a human town or a human building or anything human. Rather obviously, perhaps, what's the difference here? As unhuman as the environment is, as desolate and isolated as it is, there are two figures. The wanderers, here they're both dressed as hikers. The wanderer is not by himself. He has a companion. The great innovation, and a lot of the texts we're going to look at are going to be about relationships, as so many have been, between men and women, and what kind of difference and what kind of problems are involved in them. One great innovation that Goethe makes, in addition to telling the Faust story really well, is he creates a love story for Faust, who never had a real love interest in any of the earlier versions. He creates a character called Margaret. If you were her friend, and that's where her name comes from in the play, you'd call her Gretchen, Maggie. So I want to use some English painters to say two words about Maggie, about Gretchen, before we finish. That beautiful moment business, the deal that Faust was going to make with the devil, and he's sure it's never going to happen. Well, the devil can't make you do things, and in Goethe's case, Mephistopheles can't really do anything. He can just trick you into stuff, which he does all the time. So because he's kind of malicious, he's compared to being a cat tormenting a mouse that the cat has caught. Mephistopheles' great desire is to keep getting Faust almost in love and then ruining it for him. And he does it consistently throughout the play. About halfway into the play, Faust runs orphan in a sense. She's not got a conventional family structure. But she's got really strong native intelligence, and she's got amazingly reliable gut reactions to what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong. So here we have Gretchen, Margaret, Maggie, if you want to call her that, presented as a young woman doing an ordinary thing like spinning thread at a spinning wheel. But what you see around her neck is one of the expensive presents that Mephistopheles steals for Faust to give to her to seduce her into having a love affair with him. So where does this character come from? Of course, partly from Goethe's imagination, but one little anecdote. When he was an undergraduate, Goethe used to walk past both the courthouse on the one hand and he used to walk past the jail on his way to lecture. And one case while he was an undergrad really kind of stayed with him for the rest of his life, and he lived to be an old man. It was the story of someone, hence the name, called Margarethe von Brandt, so Margaret or Gretchen. Margarethe von Brandt was a young woman who was seduced by an older man. The older man impregnated her and abandoned her. She had the baby and she killed it. She was arrested. Infanticide was not merely a serious crime in the period, it was a capital offense. It carried the death penalty. While Goethe was an undergraduate, he would walk past as the trial was going on and think about who was responsible for the misery in this young woman's life. He would then walk past her as she was held in prison, awaiting her execution, and then she was executed while he was still a student. He decides to make Gretchen into Faust's love interest. And so the story, which is drawing on real history, but is, of course, very much Goethe's own imagination, tracks against the story that he had witnessed as an undergrad. And so Rossetti and Cadogan Cowie, the two painters that I wanted you to have in mind here, because they're such vivid images, finishes, as you might expect, with Faust having seduced, impregnated, and abandoned. Many other deaths occur as well. The young woman, Gretchen, coming back and trying to persuade her to escape from jail. He's got the devil with him. He could make it happen. She just needs to agree. Here, and she's really having very severe mental health issues, Ophelia-like, at the end of the play, based on all the pain and suffering she's endured. Here at the end of the play, Faust is going to try to persuade her, and there's Mephistopheles in the background with the moon, to escape with him. That's Cadogan's image, and I want to finish with Rossetti's. So she's got a choice, and that's what Rossetti's image captures. There's Margaret, imprisoned. There's Faust trying to get her to leave. There's Mephistopheles continually trying to distract everybody and ruin everything, because that's what the devil does. But here are Margaret's choices. Will she repent what she's done? Think of Paolo and Francesca and those who don't repent and heed the voice of the angel, or will she heed the voice of a real powerful drawn down into hell? Despite the petitions of Faust and of Mephistopheles, Gretchen, in a moment of maturity that Faust will never achieve, refuses to leave. She says very simply, I did kill my child, and therefore I have to take my punishment. I have to accept my execution. Just as she is saying this, a voice calls out, not from any character, just from the air. A voice calls out, and the German matters because the two sentences sound really similar. A voice calls out and says ominously, Sie ist gerätet. She has been judged, condemned. She's going to hell. She's going to die, and she's going to go to hell. She then, horrified by this, reflects and says, even though she's not quite making sense of the world around her, says, I beg forgiveness from God. And a second ominous voice also comes out of the air, not from any character. And this Sie ist gerichtet, gerätet comes out as well. She is not judged, gerichtet. She is in fact gerätet. She is actually going to be forgiven. As a result of this, her soul will go to heaven. It's an 11th hour, if you like, moment of seeking forgiveness. Goethe spends the rest of his human life trying to figure out what to do with Faust. Faust and Mephistopheles escape. They never pay for what they do. There's a whole second part of Faust, and the issues are never fully resolved. So I wanted you to have that little bit of Faust in your mind. Despair. What do we do when we despair? For what would you be willing to sell your soul? Do we see the world of heaven as being like our world, or do we see it as different? When we see suffering and pain in the world, is it just a matter of a lack of goodness, or is there actually some real malevolent force out there that's trying to get us? How do we function lonely and alone So many of us online in these virtual environments just in the moment. How do we focus and function as human beings when we're lonely and alone? And what kind of last minute turnaround or changes are possible? Or do we always end up on the way to some kind of tragic conclusion that we saw at the beginning of the course? So those are some of the things I thought you'd like to have in mind, because Pushkin is a huge fan of Faust, really loves the play, and he's going to use a lot of that material to make his little story that's about magic and fairy tales and strange happenings in St. Petersburg. So I'll leave you with it just now, at the moment, as the end for today. Be up next Tuesday morning, and please don't hesitate to get in touch with me if you have anything that you want to talk about or anything that's important. Wish you all very much safe weekends, and I hope everything is going as smoothly and as positively as possible for you, knowing how difficult things are just at the moment. So one final last full face thing, and I leave you to as much safety and as much good health as possible. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.